2025 has really seen a surge in the interest and the investment around artificial intelligence. And the expectation is that this technology will continue to grow and lead the way in how our country and realistically the globe will operate. But with so much investment so quickly, there are those who wonder if we are not headed for a bubble that may see the floor taking right out from under the feet of artificial intelligence. Not everybody believes that, though, or at least that the bubble should be a major concern. Lynn Wu is an associate professor of operations, information, and decisions here at the Wharton School. Hi, Lynn. How are you today?
Good. How are you? Thank you for having me.
So, in reading some of your comments, correct me if I'm wrong, you believe there is a bubble, but maybe not a bubble that we should be all totally concerned about right now.
Yes, I believe that is that represents my sentiment. It is a bubble. I'm not going to dispute that. I mean, the fact that OpenAI are doing some kind of like 1.5 to $2 trillion deals, only having $13 billion in revenue. So it's like about 100 times less than what's needed for the investment. So I'm not disputing it's a bubble, but I think it's not a bubble such like the subprime loan where assets price gets inflated. In this case, the bubble is one of these bubble precedes most important technology evolutions we have in history. So with a technology such as artificial intelligence or Gen AI that is quickly changing how the things are being done in every
Mhm.
field, every
Right.
industry. That needs to be a lot of investment needed to be for us to get there. And that's the investment in some sense that's kind of needed. And that bubble is representation of that. So let me just give you an example by what I mean by this. For example, one of the first technology crash is actually the railroads manic in the 1840s, I believe, right? And it was I believe, maybe one of the first tech bubbles out there, and hundreds of these, well, maybe even thousands of these railway lines that has almost zero economic justification were added anyway, right? And the bubble bursted. But these railways are really important for Britain, for the US, became a major transportation network that fueled future economic growth, right? So, and same thing with electricity. And if you think about a dot-com bubble, uh, that's our in most recent history. That probably the closest one we have today, right? And it's just the story is very similar.
Do then these large kind of transformative technologies, when they kind of come on board, do they lend themselves at least to the thought process of a potential bubble just because they're so new, just because they are so different than what we are used to have been experiencing?
Well, I think it's almost a necessity. People have to believe in this medic in order to make that enormous investment, right?
Right.
So in .com, yeah, a lot of company went belly up after the 2002, 2003s, right?
Right.
But enormous telecom investment, the fiber optic cables were being built, allow that pretty much allowed the internet to be so cheap or almost free as we have today, right?
Right.
And that's eventually as a result of that, we have e-commerce, we had Google, and we have lots of like we have Netflix, right? We have lots of these amazing
Sure.
companies that born right after that because of this economic investment that made on .com.
Well, and in this instance, with artificial intelligence, we're still not at a point yet where we have maximized what AI could potentially do. And so there's that uncertainty that's involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see in the worst case, right? So it bubble bursts, right? But we have made so much investment in data center, in energy infrastructure that we just haven't been able to make it as a country. And even if it bursts in one day, okay, and there might be some kind of short-term economic downside for the speculators. But the fact is, we have invested a ton of infrastructures that will have tremendous spillover effects on the rest of the economy, right? So if you were
Right.
just doing investment on a very small sector of economy, like for example, just for housing, right? It may or just the asset inflation of housing. It didn't really make any kind of infrastructure investment. Then it didn't
Right.
really then it's probably a bad bubble. But in this case, the bubble has made collective investment on the important infrastructure we all need, and that positive spillover effects is going to be affecting the rest of the economy in a very positive way.
And you have so many companies that are, taking the time and making even a small investment in how AI could have a positive impact on their business. Or if it's not going to have that much of a business, at least they have researched it and they've looked at it. Taking the time and understanding is part of this process.
Absolutely, and this time is actually really hard, and because the upside is so enormous,
Right.
but the probability of success is so low right now, right? There's some recent statistics saying that, 90 to 95% of AI projects fail, depends
Right.
on how you count it. But they didn't mention perhaps that the 5% or 10% that were successful are enormously successful. They're hundreds of millions of dollars in profit. So people want to be the 5%.
How then does it play into this concern of a bubble that with something like ChatGPT, you have updated versions of it seemingly coming out every month, 2 months, and just as a business or a person is getting used to one platform, they have to get used to something different as well.
Yeah, that's a part of exciting part about like over like maybe Greenspan said rational exuberance, right? We are so excited about the technology is going the capability is improving at an exponential rate. That is
Right.
why you see this every new version coming out every few months because they have to because Gemini is doing it and Meta is doing it, Amazon is trying to do it. It's a collective effort trying to achieve something like AGI. That's great. And whether we're successful or not, um, is another story. But during that time, enormous investment for the future is being made and generated. And I think we're all going to benefit from that someday.
It's just unique that we have seen, as you alluded to before, instances of bubbles that obviously were negative, and that we may be in a situation here where there might be a bubble developing, or there is one, but it's not necessarily a bad thing.
Yes, in long run, for sure, is probably strictly positive because the enormous positive spillover from this particular race to do better AI that made a better energy access, made better data centers. That's all going to power future economic growth.
Does the speed at which this occurs, is that factoring into people's concern about any kind of developing bubble?
Well, this is I mean, we rarely seen this kind of, speed, right? I mean, we have been experiencing Moore's law of, doubling every 2 years or so, but this is like data center uses 100x, right? So, well, I think we're on some of a new territory here, and, ChatGPT's adoption is like the fastest ever for the consumer product. So, I think we're on a brave new world in the Wild West here to see what's actually what's gonna happen. But history, tell us it's not as as dire as some of the have some have postured.
So as this continues to develop, are there things you are watchful for to see play out and to be watching how that bubble kind of develops in the future?
So I'm really interested to see positive business use cases. Like how is it actually being used? What are some best business cases in what industry? How they're being developed? The problem associated with it. Once I see these positive cases, my concern for the bubbles are alleviating. But I do. But if I see a lot of company just using we haven't quickly figured out how to use these technology in a positive, effective way, then that's when I get a little worried. But I have seen some really great positive cases in the recent history. Yeah.
Lynn, great to talk to you again. Thanks very much for your time today. All the best.
Yeah, thank you.
Lynn Wu, Associate Professor of Operations, Information, and Decisions here at the Wharton School.